Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Bienvenidos, worldwide fright fans, and welcome to the horror show. I am Jaime and Fuego, welcoming you to another Patreon review, and yes, this one I am flying solo on, but shout out to my buddy Mikey Mnemonic, who is responsible for this suggestion. Yes, it took a lot of time, so we apologize about that, obviously. Cecil had initially watched it, bought the Blu-ray, and that was a while back, and I just finally got around to watching it.
I watched it, I remember liking it, I remember enjoying the creatures, but I don't remember nearly enough to be able to do an actual good review. But I remember liking it more than I think this guy might have, but I don't know.
And he's responsible for the fact that we actually had the ability to watch it. So this is a 1981 film called The Boogens. And The Boogens is, in fact, creature fare taking place in Colorado, early 80s, obviously. And it very much has that vibe of, you know, late 70s, early 80s horror, where the acting is a slight bit more sophisticated. It's not of the campy variety, which started to happen as we got later into the 1980s and stuff like that. This is still horror, taking itself fairly seriously, but still having, like, amusing comedic bits from the actors. I mean, it's surprisingly well written when we finally do get to creature stuff. It's pretty cool. So, yeah, as far as overall impressions go, and we'll just go through this with yours truly, as per usual. And overall impressions, I was entertained by it, you know? I was more amused, acting was better. It did kind of jaws it a little more than I was hoping that it would, but that's presumably because of budgetary constraints and stuff like that, so we don't really see creature for a long time, not until the third act, you know, without being super spoilerific. So just be prepared for a little bit of building tension, but I mean, also getting to know characters that I surprisingly enjoyed quite a bit, more so than I was anticipating. And so, story basically, there is this mine that is being reopened by all these different guys, and yeah, they're going in there to, you know, do some digging and, you know, try to get some, you know, precious metals and, you know, minerals and whatever. I forget the specifics of what they're in there for, but it was a cave that had been, a mine specifically, that had been closed down for a lengthy period of time after a significant, you know, like rock cave-in trapped a bunch of miners and they all died. Yeah, really sad, effed up story and stuff like that. But there were still murmurings that there was more to what exactly transpired, and yeah, that's where we really get the setup for this. And our leads are a couple of actual younger miner guys who work there. One in particular who was cracking amusing jokes and being very cool and just kind of funny. He's kind of like the Rico Suave ladies man of sorts, and then his buddy is the more slightly shy type, but yes, the one who I just mentioned, who's cracking all the jokes and, you know, the yucks and such, his lady is coming with a friend of hers, and you know, they have this this rental property that they're going to be staying at, this like cabin of sorts. And the film essentially starts out with, you know, seeing that the mine has been reopened, that they've got, you know, they're getting back in there where there was presumably nasty stuff that went down at that one particular point, you know, decades and decades ago. And yeah, we also see the woman who is basically getting the, like, you know, generator and the power up and running at this property that, you know, our leads are going to be staying at. And that's where the first creature attack goes down, and it just kind of goes from there into nearly an hour of just getting to know these people and the flirtation and the silliness. And it really does actually add to the depth and the interest when they get picked off. You know, it takes its time to actually get there, obviously, but, you know, there's a cute dog, and, you know, both of the male and female leads respectively, because it's, you know, it's 2 and 2, their chemistry with each other and with, you know, the members of the opposite sex is all really funny. And I mean, just like some of the quips, for instance, that you get from our ladies man dude, as he meets up with his girl, and they go to shoot pool and hang out and have drinks at the bar and stuff like that. His character says, "Hey, guess what? It's the year anniversary of your first orgasm." And of course, his girlfriend like goes to slug him and stuff. And so it's that sort of like witty banter and interplay that we have a decent amount of in this movie before it actually goes into full-on, you know, creature effect. And yes, when that does happen, you know, there's the old miner guy who survived, and he's, trying to warn them about what really happened, and you gotta shut the mine back down. So you do have your fair share of stereotypes in this, but I mean, the 4 leads are all very solid, and like some of the other, foreman and miner characters that are a little bit older that we meet, they're all decent enough too. So besides our, older, survivor type, who is our one big, just kind of tropey character, everybody else is much more interestingly fleshed out, and that is a good segue into the acting, because yeah, as I said, it's like, you could have had great banter and, great dialogue and a decent enough setup. Like I said, there's creatures that have escaped from a mine that have been collapsed for decades. Okay, yeah, we've obviously heard this before, but if you didn't have good actors to actually deliver these lines believably and in a non-schlocky manner, and as opposed to seem like they're just speaking dialogue, they feel like real people, that's what makes this movie special, and that was more so a hallmark in my estimation of late 70s and early 80s horror in comparison with what we started getting, as I mentioned earlier, trudging later into the, just goofiness of the 1980s as far as horror. This was where it still took itself pretty seriously, and I feel like the actors did as well, and they all do a very solid job, most notably the 2 who end up really becoming our lead duo and it's the 2 shy people, so they end up kind of hooking up and having a thing, and they become our 2 leads, and they're the ones that are really at the forefront of trying to stop stuff, and their performance and chemistry is great as well. So I mean, all across the board, acting is not bad. It's above what you would expect for not only a creature movie, but for 80s horror. But once again, 1981 was when this came out. As we jump into score and things of that nature, sound effects, the sound effects of these creatures are what sell it to us long before we actually see them, and a little bit of like snarling and stuff that we hear, and just slimy writhing of tentacles and things like that. And yeah, it's a decent score as well, nothing that I can write home about necessarily, but it was back before the whole like super synthiness started coming in the later 80s, so it is more of like your classic motion picture type score, and I appreciate that. It once again helped to elevate the material from pure B badness as you see in horror and have for decades and decades at this point. As far as creature design goes, any sort of gore, it's not a particularly gory film as things are transpiring. Once again, budgetary constraints, so it's more so like you see a tentacle get flung for most parts, like, breaking open floorboards and things of that nature, wrapping around people's throats and, pulling them down and choking them and things like that. And just seeing the aftermath of, like, bites and or people dead already having their faces all chewed up and stuff. So, yeah, full-on gorehounds, they will be impressed with the aftermath, but the fact that there's so much cutaway because of the, obvious, money to, not problems, but, they just knew what they had to work with, and they do save, like, the payoff of this payload, so to speak, until the third act, when we finally do get to see what this creature looks like, and it's not bad. It's actually pretty cool. It's almost like some, well, I don't want to completely, like, divulge everything, but it has, like, I don't know, like glossed over eyes because it's been living in the darkness of caves and obviously evolving for decades, if not, thousands, millions, who the hell knows, this weird remote area of Colorado that this all takes place. But yeah, once we do get the full-fledged design, it's cool, and we do actually get a few pretty fulfilling bits once they finally show the creature in its full scale, as opposed to, like it's just like a tentacle or just like a brief flash of the way it looked and stuff. And so, yeah, man, it's not necessarily one that I would have sought out necessarily, but that is the cool thing about, people like, Mikey, Trauma, Trash, and Mnemonic, and a lot of the other awesome patrons that we have here, because of the fact that they bring attention to the seldom seen a lot of the time, and that's why you're here to, enlighten us, and we appreciate the suggestions, and we appreciate getting the chance to talk about it, especially when it's not something where there's a major difference of opinion. The creature design, once we finally got it, was cool. The acting was well above average, and this is a very interesting period of horror as we were transitioning, between decades and between stylistic aspects and approaches and stuff like that, but I really appreciated what they did with the presumed limitations that they had, and I I was impressed. I actually really quite liked this one, and once again, Mikey, thank you very, very much. And if you are seeing this video long after it has initially debuted on the Patreon, and you're just seeing it on YouTube, become a patron. Jump to the link that we have in the description below. That's where it has all of the breakdown info about just if you want to be in the tier where you can just watch stuff, if you want to be in a higher one to suggest stuff, whether it's, you know, reviews, commentaries. We also have a boogie box if you want to really shell out and support, and we will send you just a whole box of goodies and cool stuff, all curated by the Horror Show, whether it's cool stuff that's been donated to us, recommendations. You know, you get a nice assortment there if you really want to be super supportive and cool. So I have been Jaime and Fuego. Yeah, you can find me on all social media sectors and whatever. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that. Like and share this video, and connect with us at the Horror Show on all respective social media. So, Mr. Mnemonic, gracias once again, dude, and to all the patrons and the viewers here in the Horror Show. I've been Jaime and Fuego, and until next time, Fright fans, remember to stay scared.